Hi, I'm Stuti and today I'll be talking about a book that I have recently finished reading, Anita Shivakumaran's The Birth of Kali. So before I get into the book, let me tell you why exactly I felt an urge to read a mythological book all of a sudden. So I was reading a Bengali book, Shita Theke Shuru by Navanita Debsen, and in this book the author retells the mythological stories in a very satirical manner, and all its protagonists were female. So after finishing that book, I immediately wanted to dive into something that can give me a feminist narrative of the mythological stories and something of more recent times. And this book is published around 2018. Now coming to the book, it is a collection of the retellings from Hindu mythology that revisit the stories from a feminist point of view, and it is of fiction genre for obvious reasons. So in this book, the author tries to depict the mythological stories would have been if they were rewritten by the female characters themselves, and induce the readers to open the windows that were so far closed by the patriarchal version of the portrayal of women in all these stories. Now coming to the different chapters, Anita Shivakumaran very interestingly started with the story of Lakshman Rekha from Ramayana, and from the present day situation we can very well infer how women are controlled and oppressed in the name of protection, and this oppression can be as ancient as the time when an impenetrable circle was drawn around Sita by her brother-in-law Lakshman, when to protect her when her husband Ram was away saving the world. And in this time, Surpanakha was the one who saved her from this plight. Surpanakha is picturized as a very sassy and independent woman in this chapter, and she is someone who is very bold about what she wants to say, and she questions the patriarchy, and she is very bold about her sexuality, etc. Very interestingly, Shivakumaran has differentiated between the two characters, where one fallen prey to the patriarchy considers to believe that anything that is being done to a woman is for a good reason, and a good woman should never question about what is being done to her, whereas the other has the cognition to question something like why all the giving things are feminine and the hard, unbreakable and unscalable things are masculine. So yeah, in the due course, we can see in this book how Surpanakha becomes an ally and helps Sita to fathom where the freedom lies. She understands that there could be a life away from this threshold where there would not be a husband to sacrifice her meals for or defer her opinions to. And in the due course, they both of the friends plan for an escape, and finally Ravan steps into Sita's hut and Sita comes out of her circle, and both of them whooshes into the sky in their chariot. So and also one more thing that is very interesting, the very shameful story of Vastraharan turns into the discarding the token of old attachments, and the toxicity, and leaving behind all the toxicity that the patriarchy had to offer her. So very interestingly, the famous story of abduction turns into a story of emancipation. And one more thing I would like to mention about this particular story is that how beautifully Shivakumaran has destroyed the binary between good and evil, because the friendship between Surpanakha or Sita and Sita or Ravan, the very celebrated evil in the epic, has a different outlook altogether in this story. Sita's story has worked as a touchstone for the readers to prepare them to confront all the uncomfortable yet admirable viewpoints of the stories that was so far comprehended from a very patriarchal outlook. And in the next chapter is about Ahalya, another famous character from Ramayana, and in the myth she is known to be someone very exemplary, a very virtuous, chaste woman who was released from her petrification, of course by a male god, Lord Ram. But in this particular story, the author is more concerned about how she endured the compulsion to be a chaste, and how did she finally liberate herself by choosing what she wanted, disregarding the fear of what others are going to say, something we are still now afraid of what others are going to say. So in the story, she made love with Lord Indra and did not hesitate to tell the truth to her husband Gautama the sage. But the husband, inflamed by his male ego, denied to accept the fact and forced her to admit that whatever she did was unknowingly and it was a mistake. But here comes the twist when Ahalya, the very dutiful and obedient wife, refused to be a puppet of her husband's false battle to prove her chastity to the society. And the power to say no as a woman who is always taught to say yes overtake the mere guilt of being with someone other than the husband who had never loved her. So she says that this gives me a sense of owning myself. I am long used to acting on instruction rather than my own decisions. And finally, she decided to collapse to a stone to refrain others from having command on her over her life. So in the next two chapters, the author has mentioned about two different famous characters from Tamil literature, and even though every stories in this book had their own ways of revealing the secrets of their experiences in their life journey, but in this particular stories, I think the author has tried to portray how firmly and vigorously these women had done what was felt needful to them, and how they have not feared the consequences of the society. So be it the story of Avvayar, a solo woman, or Kanakki, who decided to stand by her love irrespective of all the difficulties to come. And one more thing that amazed me in these two pieces is how Sivakumaran shattered the conventional idea of women's love as their weakness. We are always known that when we love someone, we become very weak. But in this particular story, their firmness, their vigor was enhanced because of their love. So that is what something amazed me. So now finally comes the story of the birth of Kali, which is also the title of the book. Maybe because of the similarity between Kali's character and the symbolic representation of other characters, and a symbol of feminine energy, ferocity and fearlessness. Maybe because of this similarity, the name of the book was kept as The Birth of Kali. And Kali's character is a milestone in the feminist interpretation of mythology. We all know. A very uncomfortable feral image of force, bursting sheer power. And Anita Sivakumaran beautifully painted her character, where Kali is bold about her sexuality, full of power and fury, uncompromised, and ruler of her own, which can be very overwhelming and disturbing at some times, because we are not used to see a goddess in such a from such a lens. So though the myth tried to make her someone bloodthirsty and uncontrollable and very illogical, and while on the other hand, of course, Lord Shiva was the one to protect her, to save her and to calm her down. Maybe because a woman killing a male god was very upsetting for the patriarchy to digest, and hence shaped the stories in their terms imbibed with patriarchal values. But the author clearly manifests it is impossible to subjugate her power with the supremacy of patriarchy. So the last half of the book gives us a very different kind of flavor of the women's journey to emancipation. And there are two retellings from Mahabharata, and in these two stories we can see that how the characters of the male protagonists eventually fade away with the radiance of the other gender. So there is one story about Amba who reincarnated as a man, Shikhandi, to take a revenge on Bhishma, and in the meantime the author constructed a very, very nice and heartwarming conversation between Arjun, who was once transformed to a woman, and Shikhandi, who was a woman in his prior life. And there is another retelling named Krishna Lila, where initially Krishna seems to be the protagonist, but by the end of the story it is Krishna, also known as Draupadi, who we tend to look back on. So, turning aside what the laureates have always said about what Dushasana did to Draupadi when the Pandavas, put her on gamble while losing the game of dice, Shiva Kumaran plunges into the story of how Draupadi, with her strings of foul words, rescued herself from the assault in court full of kings and other men, including her 5 husbands and her old lover Karna. And how at the end all the women behind the curtains celebrated this fearless gesture of Draupadi, and furthermore the valor of the womanhood. And Draupadi, the Krishna, marks her, remembrance in the reader's mind as she becomes the rescuer of her own. Finally, the last chapter comes, and in this chapter, the story is in a play form, and it starts with a figurative character of no sex or no gender, and along with some other figurative characters, and all of them dissolve into Kali's mouth of eternal nothing, giving us a sense of that everything in our society is a social construct where we are always instructed to follow a path decided by the powerful, and everything eventually will cease down to the never-ending nothingness. So this is how the book ends, and I would not say that this book is an outcry for how women were treated in those days, or to point out that what injustice that had been done to them during that time, but it is a book where the author gives, rightfully gives a chance to the characters, to the female characters, to rewrite, to retell their stories from another point of view that was so far unseen by us because of the traditional storytelling by the patriarchs. So also one more thing I would like to mention is how tactfully she marked the issues of casteism, sexual violation or sexual objectification or sexualization, while at the same time, with the weapon of fiction, she destroyed all these binaries in a way that has made the essays much more lifelike and sometimes piercing through our false social consciousness. To conclude, I would like to say that the retelling of mythological stories is not something new that has been done in this book, but this one is a very important and a very crucial read. And like the title of the book suggests, that the birth of many Kalis who are fearlessly destroying the moral standards of the society by rewriting their own narratives, to reclaim their spaces in the society. So if you are someone who is not very familiar with all the mythological characters or mythological stories, I would still recommend you to give this book a read, because it will give you a sense of liberation of the women of centuries before, and because the sense of liberation is still something very rare for the women, because you won't see a woman living her life on her terms without any fear or any guilt. So something better than nothing. So why not start liberating women from the fictional stories.